Vienna looked like a city built for romance. Wide streets, soft lamps, old buildings that glowed at night like they remembered every love story ever told. In winter, the air smelled like roasted chestnuts and coffee. In spring, the trees turned the sidewalks into green tunnels. Couples held hands near the river. Couples kissed outside train stations. Couples smiled at each other in cafes like nothing could touch them. Yet for Adrian Keller, love had always felt out of reach. It was not because he was ugly. Adrian was the kind of handsome that made people look twice without meaning to. He was tall, clean-cut, and always dressed well. He had calm eyes and a gentle smile. He also came from a wealthy home, the kind of home with tall windows, art on the walls, and quiet money that never needed to talk. On paper, he was everything many women said they wanted. In real life, he was the kind of man women escaped from after one date. Not because of him, because of his mother. Adrian's mother was named Margaret Keller. She was elegant, sharp, and proud. Her hair was always perfect. Her perfume arrived before she did. She spoke like her words were meant to be obeyed, not discussed. Margaret loved her son. That part was true. But her love was not soft. Her love was control. She had raised Adrian like he was not just her child, but her project. She chose his clothes. She chose his friends. She chose what he ate, what he studied, what he should say in public, and how long he should stay in a place before leaving. Even now, when Adrian was 32, she acted like he was still a boy crossing a busy road for the first time. She also believed something deeply. She believed that no woman would ever be good enough for him. And if a woman tried to get close, Margaret did not whisper her disapproval. She showed it, loudly. It started small. When Adrian was younger, Margaret would ask too many questions about any girl he liked. She would request family names, school records, the kind of childhood the girl had. She would ask whether the girl knew how to behave around important people. Adrian used to laugh it off. He used to tell himself his mother just cared. But as Adrian got older, Margaret's care became a shadow that followed him everywhere, even to dates. At first, Adrian thought it was a one-time thing, a mistake, a weird moment. He had planned a dinner with a woman named Clara, a bright lawyer with warm eyes and a confident voice, that chose a restaurant near the river. Adrian arrived early, nervous in a hopeful way. He wanted the evening to go smoothly. He wanted to finally feel normal. Then a black car pulled up behind him. Margaret stepped out wearing a long coat and a calm smile like she belonged there. Adrian's stomach sank. Margaret walked right up to him as if this had always been the plan. She touched his cheek in front of the restaurant like he was a child coming home from school. Then she stepped beside him and waited, standing so close that any stranger would assume she was part of the date. Clara arrived 5 minutes later. Clara's smile changed the moment she saw Margaret. Adrian tried to make it seem harmless. He tried to make it seem like Margaret was only passing by. But Margaret did not play along. Margaret sat with them. Margaret ordered wine. Margaret asked Clara questions that felt like a job interview. Margaret asked Clara's parents. Margaret asked about Clara's money. Margaret asked about Clara's intentions. Adrian watched Clara's face grow tight, like a door slowly closing. By dessert, Clara said she had an early morning and needed to leave. Her eyes never met Adrian's again after that. When Adrian checked his phone later, Clara's message was short. She wished him well. She also said she could not date a man who arrived with his mother. Adrian told himself it was just one bad night. Then it happened again, and again, and again. Margaret followed him to coffee dates. Margaret followed him to museum dates. Margaret followed him to theater nights. Margaret followed him even when he tried to change locations last minute. Sometimes she appeared like she had been waiting around the corner. Sometimes she arrived 5 minutes after the date began, as if she was tracking him. Adrian began to feel like he was living inside a glass box, watched from every angle. The women he met reacted in different ways. Some were polite but uncomfortable. Some were annoyed and openly angry. Some looked at Adrian with pity, like he was trapped. A few laughed about it later in their friends' groups. Adrian's name began to travel across the city in a way he didn't want. Not as a handsome bachelor, not as a rich man, but as a joke. The wealthy mummy's boy who could not sit at a table without his mother holding the air around him. The worst part was not the public embarrassment. The worst part was how Margaret acted like she was helping. Margaret would lean toward Adrian and speak in a calm, pleased voice as if she had saved him from danger. She would remind him that women could be fake, that women could pretend, that women could use him for his money, his status, his name. She would speak like the world was full of traps and she was his shield. And Adrian, for a long time, believed her. He didn't want to disrespect his mother. He didn't want to break her heart. He didn't want to be ungrateful. So he kept letting her in. He kept letting him sit beside him. He kept letting her ruin every chance he had. In the quiet of his room at night, Adrian would stare at his ceiling and wonder if love was something other people were born for and he was not. He would imagine a life where he came home to someone who waited for him, not to a mother who questioned him. He would imagine a life where he could breathe. But then morning came, and Margaret's voice returned, strong as ever. One evening, Adrian attended a charity event at a grand hotel. The ballroom was filled with soft music, expensive suits, and careful smiles. People spoke in polite tones. Cameras flashed like small lightning. Margaret stood beside Adrian, like always, gripping his arm lightly, as if she was afraid he might slip away. Across the room, Adrian saw someone he recognized. It was a woman named Sophie Lang, a journalist who had once tried to date him months earlier. Sophie was smart, funny, and quick with words. Adrian had liked her a lot. Their date had been a disaster. Margaret had arrived, sat down, and made Sophie feel like she was being measured for worth. Sophie smiled through it, but Adrian had seen her eyes. He had seen the moment she decided to leave. Now Sophie stood with her friends, laughing softly. And then Adrian heard it. He heard his name, not loud, not shouted, just spoken with that kind of amused disbelief people use when they tell stories. Adrian's face warmed, his jaw tightened. He didn't hear every word, but he heard enough. He heard handsome and rich and sweet. Then he heard, but his mother. Sophie's friends laughed. Not cruel laughter, not evil, but laughter that made Adrian feel smaller than he had felt in years. Margaret didn't notice, or maybe she did and didn't care. She leaned toward Adrian, smiling as if the night was perfect. Adrian stood there in a suit that cost too much and a life that felt too small. Something inside him snapped, not loudly, but cleanly, like a rope finally breaking after years of pulling. That night, Adrian drove home alone. The city lights blurred past like passing thoughts. He parked outside the mansion and sat in the car, hands still on the wheel, staring at the door. He didn't go inside right away. He took a slow breath. He pictured the rest of his life if nothing changed. He pictured himself at 40, still bringing his mother along like a shadow. He pictured his mother growing older, still controlling him, still deciding what was best, still treating him like a child. He pictured alone. Then he pictured something else. He pictured a woman sitting across from him, relaxed, smiling, safe with him. He pictured laughter that didn't have shame attached to it. He pictured peace. And he realized a simple truth. If he wanted a different life, he had to choose it. No one was going to rescue him, not even love. He had to rescue himself first. The next morning, Adrian woke up with a new kind of focus. It was not anger, it was not hate, it was clarity. Margaret was already in the kitchen when he walked in, dressed and perfect as always. She was reviewing a list on her tablet as if his life was a calendar she could manage.
Adrian poured coffee and sat down without asking permission for the space. Margaret started talking about a woman she had met at a gallery. The woman was the daughter of a respected family. The woman was appropriate. The woman was well raised. The woman was suitable. Margaret spoke like she was offering Adrian a gift. Adrian listened, calm. Then he said something he had never said before. He said he was going to start dating on his own. He said he would handle his own choices. He said he wanted privacy. Margaret stared at him like she didn't understand the words. Then her face hardened. Margaret did not like being challenged. She told him he was being foolish. She told him he was being influenced by the wrong people. She told him women were dangerous and he was too soft. Adrian did not shout. He did not insult her. He simply repeated it. He would date on his own, and his mother would not come.
Margaret tried a different method. She acted hurt. She acted betrayed. She reminded him of all she had done for him, all she had sacrificed, all the years she gave him. Her voice trembled on purpose. Her eyes held that sharp shine of controlled tears. This was Margaret's strongest weapon: guilt. Adrian felt it hit him like a wave. For a moment, he almost folded. Then he remembered the laughter at the hotel. He remembered the tight smiles. He remembered the empty phone after every date. He remembered the quiet loneliness. And he held his ground. Adrian didn't just want a date. He wanted a real chance. So he did something bold. He left his comfort circle. He stopped letting his mother's friends set him up. He stopped using the same fancy restaurants where everyone knew his last name. He began moving through the city like a normal man, not a protected prince. One afternoon, he walked into a small bookstore near the tram line. It was quiet, warm, and smelled like paper and cinnamon tea. The kind of place people went when they wanted silence, not attention. Inside, a woman was kneeling near the bottom shelf, stacking books. She wore a simple coat, her hair tied back, her face calm. She looked up when Adrian walked in. Her eyes were steady, not impressed, not nervous, not hungry for his status, just steady. Adrian felt something strange, not excitement, not fear, relief. The woman's name was Elena Brooks. She was 30, mixed race with warm brown skin and dark curly hair, and she had a quiet strength in her posture. She looked like someone who had dealt with hard things and did not beg the world for mercy. Adrian asked for a book recommendation. Elena gave him one without trying to impress him. Their conversation was small, simple, and real, and for the first time in a long time, Adrian felt like himself, not Margaret's son, just Adrian. He returned the next day, and the next, not because he needed books, because he needed that calm space where no one watched him like property. Elena noticed his pattern, but she did not tease him or flirt loudly. She kept it simple. Adrian liked that. He did not tell Elena his last name at first. He did not tell her where he lived. He did not tell her about the mansion. He wanted a chance to be liked for who he was, not for what he had. That decision, while innocent, also carried danger, because secrets, even small ones, can grow teeth. A week later, Adrian asked Elena to meet him for coffee after her shift. Elena agreed. They sat by a window in a quiet cafe. People passed outside, wrapped in coats, moving like shadows under the streetlights. Adrian felt nervous, not because his mother was coming, because she wasn't. This was his first real step. He told Elena he liked her. He told Elena he wanted to know her better. Elena listened carefully. She did not fall into his arms. She did not rush. She asked him simple questions. What kind of life did he want? Was he close to his family? Was he free? That last question landed in Adrian's chest like a stone. Free. Adrian swallowed and nodded. He wanted to say yes completely, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet.
Still, he wanted to try. He said he was ready to build his own life. Elena watched him for a long moment, as if she was reading the parts he did not say. Then she nodded slowly, and that nod felt like a door opening. That night, Adrian went home with a lightness he had not felt in years. He walked into the mansion, and Margaret was waiting like she had been sitting in that spot the whole time, listening for his return. Her eyes narrowed when she saw his calm smile. She asked where he had been. Adrian said he had been out. Margaret asked with who. Adrian paused, then said he had met someone. Margaret's face changed. Not surprise, not curiosity, possession. Margaret demanded details: name, background, family. Adrian didn't give them, and that made Margaret's control tighten like a fist. Margaret told Adrian she would meet the woman soon. Adrian's stomach turned. He told Margaret no. Margaret laughed, a cold, short sound, and in that laugh, Adrian felt the real battle begin. In the days that followed, felt heavier, not loud, not dramatic, just heavy in the quiet way that makes every step feel watched. Adrian tried to keep his new life steady. He met Elena after work. They walked by the river. They sat in cafes where no one knew his name. He listened to her talk about books, about people she met in the shop, about how the city changed its mood with the seasons. With Elena, Adrian felt lighter, not because life was perfect, but because it was honest. But Margaret did not sleep. Margaret did not wait. She moved like someone who had decided to win. Margaret began by gathering information. She called people Adrian did not know she still spoke to. She asked about Elena's past, her family, her work. She spoke kindly on the phone, but her questions were sharp, cutting for weakness. When she learned Elena worked in a small bookstore and lived alone in a modest apartment, Margaret laughed. Not with joy, with judgment. To Margaret, Elena was not just unsuitable. Elena was invisible, unimportant, someone who should never stand beside her son. And Margaret had no plan to be quiet about it. One afternoon, Adrian arrived at the bookstore earlier than usual. Elena was standing behind the counter, sorting a box of deliveries. When she looked up, her smile appeared, then faded slightly. Something was wrong. Elena tried to hide it, but Adrian noticed the tightness in her shoulders, the way she avoided his eyes for a second too long. He asked if she was okay. Elena hesitated. Then she said someone had come earlier asking questions about her. A woman, elegant, cold, polite in a way that felt like an inspection. Elena did not need to say the name. Adrian knew. His chest tightened. He apologized immediately. He told Elena his mother could be intense. He told her he was working on boundaries. He promised it would not happen again. Elena listened quietly. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse. But her calm made the moment more serious. Elena said something simple. She said she did not want to be part of a battle between a grown man and his mother. She said she liked Adrian, but she needed peace. Those words scared Adrian more than anger ever could. That evening, Adrian went home with his jaw set. Margaret was in the living room, seated like a queen waiting for news from the front line. She did not deny visiting the bookstore. She said she had every right. She said she was protecting her son. She said Elena was not from their world. She said Adrian was throwing away his future for someone temporary. Margaret spoke confidently, as if the argument was already won. Adrian stood still. Then, for the first time in his life, he raised his voice. Not shouting, firm. He told Margaret she had crossed a line. He told her Elena was his choice. He told her his love life was not a family meeting. Margaret stared at him stunned. Then her face hardened. Margaret did not cry. She attacked. She told Adrian he was ungrateful. She reminded him who paid for his education. She reminded him who stood by him when his father died. She said if Adrian chose Elena, she would lose her support, her blessing. Margaret believed this threat would end everything. But Adrian didn't fold. He felt fear, yes, guilt, yes, but something else rose higher. Respect for himself. He told Margaret he loved her, but he would not live like a child anymore. He left the room before she could reply. Margaret changed tactics. If control would not work, she would use shame. Within days, rumors started moving quietly through social circles that Adrian was dating beneath his class, that the woman was using him, that she did not know who she was dealing with. Elena began to feel the weight of eyes in public spaces. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Friends asked careful questions. One evening, Elena confronted Adrian. She asked him directly who he really was. Adrian knew the moment had come. He told her everything. About the mansion, the wealth, the family name, the influence. Elena listened without interruption. When he finished, she did not say anything for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised him. She said she was not angry about the money. She was angry about the fear. She said Adrian had hidden himself because he was still controlled by someone else. She said she liked the man he was becoming, but she needed to know if that man was real. She told him she would not compete with his mother. She would not beg. She would not shrink. If Adrian wanted a future with her, he would have to choose it openly, not secretly, not halfway. Adrian understood.
This was the moment that mattered. Margaret decided to force the issue publicly. She hosted a large family gathering at the mansion and invited Elena without telling Adrian. When Adrian arrived and saw Elena standing in the living room surrounded by people who watched her like a strange object, his heart dropped. Margaret smiled calmly. She introduced Elena in a tone that sounded kind but carried sharp edges. She made comments about Elena's job, about her background, about how different she was. The room felt tight. Adrian felt years of fear push against his chest. Then he remembered something simple. Fear only survives when fed. Adrian stepped forward. He took Elena's hand. He introduced her again, this time as the woman he loved. He said it clearly, calmly. He said he was proud of her. He said his life was his to choose. The room went silent. Margaret's face froze. This was not part of her plan. Adrian did not argue. He did not insult. He simply chose. He told everyone he was leaving with Elena, and he did. The fallout was quiet, but deep. Margaret refused to speak to him for weeks. Family members took sides. Adrian moved out of the mansion. He rented a modest apartment near the river. For the first time, his life looked smaller from the outside, but it felt larger on the inside. Elena watched him carefully, not with suspicion, with hope. They learned each other slowly. They argued. They adjusted. Adrian learned how to make decisions without asking permission. Elena learned how to trust someone who was still learning. Months passed. Then, one evening, Margaret called. Her voice was tired, not commanding. She asked to meet. They sat in a quiet cafe. Margaret did not apologize fully. Margaret did not change completely, but she admitted something important. She admitted she was afraid of being alone. She admitted she had held Adrian too tightly. She said letting go felt like losing him. Adrian listened. He told her he was not leaving her. He was just living. That conversation did not fix everything, but it softened something. Years later, Adrian and Elena walked through Vienna hand in hand. They were married, not loudly, not extravagantly, but honestly. Margaret attended the wedding. She sat in the front row. She did not control the day.
She watched. Adrian looked older now, stronger. Elena smiled the way people smile when they know where they belong. They did not live in the mansion. They did not chase approval. They lived a quieter life near the river. Margaret visited sometimes, with limits, with respect. Love remained, but it had borders now, and those borders saved everyone. On a warm evening, Adrian stood on a bridge watching the lights reflect on the water. Elena stood beside him. No shadows followed them anymore. Only choice, only peace, only the simple truth that love grows best when it is free.